I also want to ask you about an article, Ed, called Senators Call on Biden to Temporarily Waive Vaccine Patents.
So there's this trade agreement that comes out of 1995, 96 called the TRIPS Agreement. It's basically, a treaty between member states of the World Trade Organization to protect the rights of transnational companies when they are creating intellectual property, and in this case specifically intellectual property around medicines, right? And these, it gives them monopoly rights, right? It's part of like a series of developments that eventually give them the power to sue for damages, to block countries from having access to them, charging whatever rates that they want to individual companies, pretty restrictive licensing. This sort of stuff is the bedrock of how big pharmaceutical companies are able to, make up and get price gouge, the global south, but also one of the reasons why there's differential access to vaccines across the world because of these really strict restrictions and, robbery, like highway robbery that they do. And so the idea here is, 100 people in the House already support this. A group of senators support this. Almost every single public health official, talking about this would support this. Waiving these IP rights, India and South Africa, I think, want to do it, or have been talking about doing it permanently, but their proposal is temporarily for the crisis so that you can locally manufacture stuff you need to diagnose, test, and manufacture vaccines.
On Friday, Senator Bernie Sanders and a group of Democratic senators called on the Biden administration to issue a temporary waiver of copyright rules that are preventing countries in the global south from locally manufacturing COVID-19 diagnostics, treatments, and vaccines. And crucially, this would allow companies in the global south to make clones of the Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson vaccines without being sued. The letter was also signed by Elizabeth Warren, good on her, Raphael Warnock, good on him, and 7 other Democratic senators. Come on, I think we should be able to get more.
Yeah, we should. And hopefully we will. I mean, in the House, there's like 100 lawmakers that have already supported it, I think. So that number is growing. A bunch of countries, 130 plus countries support this. It's really just the United States and, a few Western holdouts who don't want this to happen and instead are fine with vaccine nationalism because they want to negotiate with these drug companies, secure a supply for their population and hoard it, essentially.
Right. It's also one of those things where it's like, just out of a sense of self-interest, you should want this to happen.
Yeah, right. The longer, because like as things are right now, vaccination for the global south happens, like full vaccination, 2022, or at the earliest 2022, but more likely like 2023, 2024. That's 2 years, 3 years in which we have a chance for mutations to occur simply because the virus is going to be out there for hundreds of, and potentially, in fact, like tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people, who knows.
And also the foreign minister of Philippines today mentioned that apparently the U.S. ordered way more than they needed and they're just hoarding it. So they should just if they could subtract the population and then they can give it to other countries that need it. But on the other hand, Russia and China are both letting Serbia manufacture their own vaccine, their version of that. So this is it's a U.S. thing.
Yeah, other countries. Earlier, I remember there's a news cycle where it's North Korea is trying to steal the vaccine. It's good,
Good.
You should steal it.
And I don't want to say anything to get myself arrested or thrown into prison, but if I definitely will not assist anyone in doing that. Don't come to me as if I have access to any of that. Yeah.
These rights are legitimate.
Yeah. People love pretending we can't do that because if you do that, how are drug companies ever going to be interested?
You don't have to have drug companies. You can have a government manufactured drugs like the Sinovac in China or the Sputnik in Russia. Or whatever Cuba. Cuba's made a third version of their own vaccine too.
That's so great.
That's what this gets at. The big pharmaceutical companies make such a stink about it. One, because it threatens their massive amount of profits. Like when they eventually do booster shots, when they eventually do, whatever comes down the line for global south countries in the global south. But they also make a stink of it because it's if you start waiving the rights, it's not that far of a leap to say why are we even letting you do it. We're paying for the research and you're just profiting off of the tail end of development.
Right.
I mean, there are some drugs where because the patent expired, there's a drug that is very good for heroin addiction, but the patent expired. So they won't let them come in the US because it's not worth even the money to do the FDA trials. And just ridiculous things like this happen.
Right.
So,
and that's also another thing, right? Because we have like a market-centered approach to it, then our regulatory apparatuses are, that much weaker, right? Where they're not going to test a drug because if it's available to the public, it just won't make money. When you should be testing on the basis of whether it will help the public, right?
Yeah.
We don't need the cutthroat capitalism.
Exactly.
So what
we don't
what is the well, okay, we don't need it, but what's the baby step away from it? Like what could happen right now?
We could, public funding already happens for a lot of medical and scientific advances and innovations. So instead of then privatizing the end result, just keep it public.
Oh, and on top of that, we could also withdraw that provision from the GATT and the WTO. And that is basically putting a leash on most, countries all over the world. I would say even if at least don't bully other countries, just do it here, do whatever you want here is kind of.
Oh my God. Yeah. Which administration was it that pressured Bolsonaro to not take the Sputnik vaccine?
Oh, that is 100% USA. It doesn't even matter. But Pfizer wanted to have these military bases as a collateral. It was totally unhinged. And so every other country besides Brazil were okay, we're going to get the Sputnik or the Sinovac. And yeah.
Oof Ed says in India, they patent the production method rather than the actual content of drugs. Not sure how this applies.
Oh, in India, they also have something called license of right. So I remember about 5 years ago, the CEO of Bayer lost a patent because they didn't make it affordable. And he said something like, we don't make drugs for Indians. We make it for Westerners who can afford it.
Oh, God.
I don't even understand how Bayer still exists after all they've done.
It's ridiculous. It's the best examples, I think, are also when countries are faced with that, and then they're just fuck you, and they steal it. And
that's what India's done it once. South Africa
did it with HIV drugs. Brazil, I think, has also done it.
Somebody's done it with the malaria drug, but I can't remember.
Was it Brazil? Brazil and South Africa, I think, are the two examples that I remember where they broke it, and the breach was so egregious that the company just came back and negotiated with them at a substantially lower price than what they were trying to gouge them for.
Yeah.
As they should.
I've been doing a lot of research on the whole privatization scheme and the new Cold War. So
privatization, same with digitization. Digitization is usually marketed as a way to make things more optimal, but it's really just to privatize things, right?
What is digitization?
It's just when you say, oh, we're going to put your healthcare on the cloud. We're going to put it through this new technical implement, right? We're going to add smart devices to the city to optimize traffic flow or to optimize.
Okay. So the smart sewers that Pete did.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But then what happens when you do that? You just privatize the municipal services.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, I feel like we should very much use this moment of COVID. We should definitely be making PR. I was thinking we should just make the lives miserable of all the people who are making these decisions.
How?
Well, okay, first I need to know who they are.
Oh, I can tell you.
And then we'll figure out the strategy. But first we need to identify them. Yeah.
Council for Foreign Relations has this really psycho task force that has all the horrible people, and they always get an audience almost every Friday with Biden. I think somebody from Council for Foreign.
All right. It's horrible. So we gotta send them a lot of glitter things. I wasn't even this is gonna
glitter boxes. Yeah, actually no. You can mail people coconuts.
Yeah.
Or potato. Oh, I think you can mail people coconuts, and then it ends up if it drops on them, it's very inconvenient.
An inconvenient truce. That's what we can call this operation.
Exactly.